I raised a child, and he was obedient and obedient, but after I died, he inherited all my power neatly and ruthlessly, torturing the other heirs I cultivated, and everyone was terrified for a while. Just as I was shocked, my soul pierced into my fiancé, whom I had appointed for him, and he was about to unload his fiancée's arm. Brady Pollitt, who was tall and dressed in a black trench coat, looked at me coldly. He's no longer a little boy who doesn't understand anything. My soul was still floating in the air, but I was sucked into Eartha Betts's body in an instant. I shook my body and looked down at my palm. I felt the concrete body. 2 bodyguards immediately stepped forward to escort me. Brady Pollitt's eyes were slightly raised, and the bottom of his eyes was cold. Many of my former subordinates stood tremblingly behind him, either bowing their heads or looking at me sympathetically. And here it is, my graveyard. Which hand touched her? He tugged at his lips. What, isn't it? I hadn't spoken for too long, and I didn't speak smoothly. Brady Pollitt's cold gaze didn't linger on me for a moment. He turned around. It's all off. As his words fell, the air seemed to fall silent. 2 bodyguards have already made a move. I think of the time when my soul was still floating in the air, and when Eartha Betsy placed the flower in front of my tombstone. She scratched her nails at my black and white photo while others were not looking. My brain was racing and I stumbled. I didn't mean to. It's Sister Clara, Tom, and her picture is dirty. Brady Pollitt paused, tilting his head slightly, the corners of his lips smiling coldly. He raised his hand, and the bodyguard immediately loosened his shackles on me. Brady Pollitt walked up to me, cold fingertips ruffling my chin. He half narrowed his eyes and asked curiously, "How do you know her real name?" My head buzzed. My real name is Clara, Tom, and when I was an adult, my father asked someone to test me, and said that Clara, Tom, was a blessing and a thin life. So he changed my name. Later I was called Amelia, Tom, but in this way, it was useless to change the name, and he still died. The name Clara, Tom, apart from my loved ones, is known only to Brady Pollitt, who has been with me since childhood. When he was a kid, he always followed my butt and called Sister Clara, Tom, and Sister Clara, Tom. Later, when I grew a little older, he curled his delicate eyebrows and called me gently Sister Clara. He was the only one who shouted that. I sneeredly explained, "You called her that before, and I heard you." Impossible. He was cold. Well, too, he only calls me sister in front of people. I was silent. No matter what, I had to save my arm first. Anyway, I'm also her fiancé for you, right? You can't be too brutal. Brady Pollitt looked at me, like he was looking at a piece of trash. Me, he sneered. Do it. Wait. I broke the jar and slammed his wrist, stared into his eyes, and gritted my teeth at him. I'm Clara, Tom, and Amelia, Tom. Brady Pollitt paused. He lowered his eyes, and finally gave me a straight look. He didn't seem surprised, but his voice was half warm. Oh, you're Amelia, Tom. I nodded. He grabbed my cheek. His eyes were fierce, and his tone was still calm. My sister Amelia, Tom, will walk into the cage by herself. Will you? I was stunned for a moment, but I didn't understand too much. The next second, I remembered. On his 16th birthday, I went abroad on errands and was not by his side. He was on the other end of the video call obediently watching me work. I took the time to ask him, "Do you have any gifts you want?" He shook his head. I smiled. "What about dreams?" "What dreams do we have, Brady Pollitt?" Brady Pollitt blinked. "I want to make a cage, and put my sister in it." I just thought he was negligent and didn't like to joke with me. So I answered, "I want gold, or I won't wait." "Okay," he said. I was taken home by Brady Pollitt. It was also my original home. To my astonishment, the furnishings have not changed in the slightest from when I lived there. He dismissed the bodyguards, went up to the second floor, and pushed open a door. Huge golden cage. It's one thing to say yes casually back then, and it's another thing to actually see it. I looked at Brady Pollitt in disbelief. His smile was dull, but he was very oppressive. "You said you were her. Then please." I was silent for a moment, then bent down and went straight into the cage. The next second, it was vigorously pulled out by Brady Pollitt with the effect of recoil. My back hit the wall and it hurt. Brady Pollitt smitted between his eyebrows. "Don't get dirty here." He doesn't believe it. I'm Amelia, Tom. But this is normal. With Brady Pollitt's suspicious and paranoid personality, it is not normal if he easily believes it. He really wanted to kill me. He really wanted to kill Eartha Betsy. The thought came to me, but I'm in Eartha Betsy's body now. And God knows if Eartha Betsy's body is dead, will my soul continue to float in the sky? I gritted my teeth and grabbed his wrist. Don't you want to know how she died? Brady Pollitt froze. I seized on his hesitation for a second and said, you don't believe she suddenly fell seriously ill and died, do you? She often chats with me, and I know everyone around her. Give me a little time to find out who killed her. Brady Pollitt hung the curtain and looked at me with emotionless eyes, as if I were being targeted by a cold-blooded snake. Brady Pollitt never looked so chilling in front of me before I was dead. He's always been very obedient. It seems that there is a lot more I don't know. I exhaled softly and looked back at him calmly. Brady Pollitt kept me for the big annual invitational business banquet on the second day. Brady Pollitt didn't have time to deal with me. In previous years, I attended this business banquet, and I randomly selected a successor candidate who was more satisfied with it in the near future. Brady Pollitt is the one I've taken the most, and he's got great looks and abilities. In addition to him, there is also a teenager. I don't know what happened to the latter now. I stood around the corner on the side of the banquet hall, my arms and my jaw raised, and I scanned everyone in the banquet hall without a trace. The mind quickly relived the interactions I had with them. That's when someone stopped me. I fixed my eyes, and her voice was crisp. Eartha Betsy. I looked at the man, the girl in an expensive gauze dress, and she stared at me. You have a face here, too. I raised my eyebrows quietly and didn't answer. It's still as unreasonable as before. It's to pester Brady Pollitt, right? You shameless woman. You think you were the one Amelia Tom pointed out to Brady Pollitt, and you're sure of it? The girl's voice became more and more snarky, but the volume of my name decreased for 2 seconds. I didn't want to attract attention with her, so I bypassed her, but she grabbed her wrist. Annoyed, she said, when Amelia Tom wasn't dead, she was kind to me. Why dare you, you bitch, ignore me? I think it's funny. When have I ever given her a good face? Lying and not typing drafts. She and my other succession candidate were so abrasive that I couldn't get away from them. Every day, the girl was so angry that she slapped me with a lot of strength. I looked at her in shock. Her eyes reddened slightly, and her voice was hoarse. Do you think Amelia Tom is dead, and you can be powerful? I frowned. You. Just when the atmosphere was deadlocked, a respectful Brady Pollitt caused ripples in this area. I turned my head with Miranda Holt. Brady Pollitt walked in with long legs, dressed in a silver gray suit, simple and golden. He and I looked at each other, and his tone was cold. Why are you here? I smiled and touched my cheek nonchalantly. Come play. I want to see what happened to those who once shrouded me. The girl just now, Miranda Holt, said the wrong thing. After I die, there will be someone else who will be a blessing, and I'm here today to find them. I don't believe that I, who have always been healthy, can get sick so easily. As the crowd grew, Miranda Holt glanced at me triumphantly, not at all aware that she was being seen as a monkey. Brady Pollitt's dark eyes fell on me, and he didn't make any further moves. Seeing this, Miranda Holt frowned and said aggressively, "Get her out of here, Brady Pollitt." "What did you watch her do?" "Fell in love with her." "Funny. If I were Amelia Tom, I wouldn't let you go." "Me?" "Yes. What does this have to do with me?" Brady Pollitt's face turned completely dark. He turned his head, and the bodyguard behind him immediately stepped forward. I was held down by the shoulders with Miranda Holt. "Throw it out." Brady Pollitt's tone was unwavering, but it was extremely oppressive. Miranda Holt's eyes widened and she shouted in disbelief, "How dare you do this to me? Amelia Tom did this to me in the first place, but you dare to do this to me? You don't deserve to mention her." Brady Pollitt's eyes were emotionless, as if he were looking at a dead man. With that, he turned around, leaving this sentence fluttering. It finally slammed into the entire quiet banquet hall. Miranda Holt gritted her teeth, but she was silent. "Why is it so lively?" With a laughing remark, Brady Pollitt stopped leaving. I jerked my head up. The person who came had curly brown hair, a fair face, and shallow dimples on his cheeks when he smiled. The boy smiled, without any shelf, very friendly. My other heir is just as abrasive as Miranda Holt." The teenagers greeted them one by one. Brady Pollitt, Miranda Holt, Sister Eartha Betsy. He smiled inexplicably, and paused quietly as he called out to me. I was keenly aware that something was wrong with Borg Rossetti's reaction. I thought, it seems that Eartha Betsy is far more complicated than it behaves in front of me. I'm still a little confused. Borg Rossetti is the one I've been with for the longest time apart from Brady Pollitt. Why didn't Brady Pollitt deal with him when he came to power? The atmosphere is still very bad. Borg Rossetti's gaze stayed on me for a moment, and then his voice raised softly. "Sister Eartha Betsy, I should call you sister-in-law now, right? Tell me, what's wrong with Brady Pollitt?" Brady Pollitt turned around and grimaced. "Shut up." Borg Rossetti shrugged. "What can you do if you don't recognize Sister Eartha Betsy? The person you want to recognize is dead. Burst. Or the wife she pointed out to you." Borg Rossetti said this in a relaxed tone, and was immediately surrounded by Brady Pollitt's men. The atmosphere was momentarily solemn, leaving Borg Rossetti with a long finale. I was stunned. What does Borg Rossetti mean by that? Sister Eartha Betsy, with his hands in his pockets, Borg Rossetti lazily called out to me, "Brady Pollitt, Amelia Tom is dead, and our Brady Pollitt will be lawless." He said so, but there was no respect in his demeanor, even a faint arrogance and sarcasm. I paused. Borg Rossetti's attitude was unpredictable to me. Once upon a time, Brady Pollitt was obedient in front of me, but there was still a distance. Borg Rossetti was so clingy to me that he had to tell me everything about the school. I had a lot of things to do on weekdays, and then Borg Rossetti got so annoyed that I wouldn't let him see me, but he kept sending me messages. In any case, it was not like now. With a nonchalant tone and no emotion blurting out my name, I squinted at Borg Rossetti. Borg Rossetti smiled and looked at me. Then he turned to Brady Pollitt and said, "I heard you're going to remove someone's arm. Sister Eartha Betsy is one of the few relics that Amelia Tom has left you." Brady Pollitt's eyes flickered, and he looked at me for a moment, then curled his lips meaningfully. Brady Pollitt lifted her chin as one of the bodyguards stepped forward, and easily snapped one of Borg Rossetti's arms. The latter's face was pale, and beads of sweat oozed from the corners of his forehead. But he still smiled. "Is it worth it for a woman?" I felt a look that wasn't friendly. I quickly looked back. Familiar faces. Father of Eartha Betsy. When he saw me looking at him, not only did he not return my father's kind smile, but his expression was even more gloomy. I looked away without a trace. I have a consideration in my heart. On the way back from the party, I called the scouting team I had trusted, increased the price, and asked them to help me find out, until I heard the sound of the car braking suddenly. I suddenly looked up, but he fainted. There's a misty scent in the air. When I woke up, I was in the dark. As I tried to figure it out, I heard a familiar voice, "Eartha Betsy." The moment I looked at the source of the sound, a strong light pierced my eyes. Poof! Ha ha ha! The joyful laughter lingered in my ears. Just as I couldn't help but question Borg Rossetti, I felt a sharp object in my abdomen. I froze. Amelia Tom doesn't deserve to live, and neither do you. Borg Rossetti has a low voice. "You hate her so much?" I asked. "The lights in the room are turned on." It flashed so hard that I closed my eyes. After a pause, he opened it again. The walls were full of photos of me, and screenshots of my reply to his message page were washed out. I gasped. Borg Rossetti's left hand is still hanging from gauze. He looked around at the pictures as if nostalgic, and said in a quiet tone, "How did you kill Amelia Tom? She can only die at my hands." My gaze snapped at him. "What? Who killed it?" Borg Rossetti looked at me for a moment, and finally the dagger in his hand fell to the ground. The smile on his lips deepened. "Long time no see, Amelia Tom." He stared at me and said word by word. As he spoke, he grabbed me by the neck with one hand and pressed me up. Just as I was about to kick him, my jaw felt warm, drop by drop of warmth. I felt Borg Rossetti's thin body tremble slightly. The corners of his mouth were still smiling, but his voice was faint and cold. "That's good. You're not Amelia Tom anymore. You're Eartha Betsy now." His cold fingertips rubbed against my neck. "Sister, you don't have anything now," he murmured softly, like a lover's whisper. I was silent. I'm not sure if Borg Rossetti really knows who I really am, and that he might be tempting me, I always thought Borg Rossetti was haunting, but I never thought it would be like a poisonous snake. What the hell is Borg Rossetti going to do? I'm not Amelia Tom, but I promised Brady Pollitt to help him find out the truth about Amelia Tom's death. I don't look over my head. My face is expressionless. That's all I care about. Borg Rossetti buried his head in my neck socket, and I couldn't see his expression. I don't know, he said. I don't believe it. If Borg Rossetti had just taken his words, then I had gone in the wrong direction. But the tricky thing for me right now is that Borg Rossetti seems to be tired of me and stay with me, in this room full of photos. I'm a little creepy. I took the initiative to negotiate with him. You let me go. We can talk about how much you want. Sister, Borg Rossetti smiled, well behaved. Do you know how I recognized you? It's so calm, and always organized. If it had been Eartha Betsy here, she would have broken down and screamed. Your demeanor, your actions, are completely different? And what is your motivation for keeping me here? I gritted my teeth and asked again. I just want you to stay with me. Borg Rossetti's voice was soft. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have known your original name was Clara Tom. No wonder I heard Brady Pollitt call you Sister Clara Tom. Can I call you that? I was already irritated by Guan. I'm not your sister. Borg Rossetti looked lonely for a moment. Me, don't pretend. Brady Pollitt, you overheard me shouting at me, right? Actually, you're having me here. You're feeling good, aren't you? Borg Rossetti let out an oops and the sadness on his face was swept away. He smiled. You can see it. Just as I was thinking about how to strangle Borg Rossetti and make an escape, the door was kicked open. The bodyguard kicked open the door and stepped back. Brady Pollitt came into my sight with one hand in his pocket. He calmly scanned the photographs in the room. There was not the slightest hint of surprise. It was as calm as stagnant water. Borg Rossetti looked up lazily. Don't you dislike Eartha Betsy? I'll take care of it for you. In a place like this. Brady Pollitt's tone was unclear. Questions? Borg Rossetti asked rhetorically. I was set up by 2 bodyguards and brought to Brady Pollitt. Brady Pollitt said in a cold tone, Amelia Tom's death has nothing to do with her, and it's not your turn to deal with it. Borg Rossetti's amber eyes shifted from Brady Pollitt to mine. Suddenly, he sneered. Actually, you're in love with Eartha Betsy, right? Otherwise, with your character, she will never appear after Amelia Tom's death. Unprovoked, Brady Pollitt looked at me condescendingly, finally resting on my neck. Borg Rossetti laughed profusely. I pinched it. What's wrong? The man behind Brady Pollitt holds Borg Rossetti up. Brady Pollitt crouched down and pinched my chin. I looked at him, the same without shying away. Brady Pollitt whispered, Don't look at me, with her eyes. Amelia Tom. I told you you weren't worthy to mention her name. Brady Pollitt shook my jaw off like some garbage. Immediately someone brought him a tissue. Brady Pollitt didn't answer. Brady Pollitt. Miss Miranda Holt found Amelia Tom's body in the coffin of the cemetery and was arguing for. Shut up. Brady Pollitt's tone rippled for the first time. It was also the first time I felt at a loss. Where did my body go? How did Miranda Holt know that there was no body in my coffin, and that she had dug up my grave? Miranda Holt broke through the bodyguards and stormed the basement. She gritted her teeth. I was just about to take Amelia Tom's corpse, and find that her corpse is gone. I asked the Dow chief and found out that she had already been done the fa. And she is back now. Me. The air was silent. Brady Pollitt didn't give Miranda Holt a look. And he wasn't surprised. Brady Pollitt. Miranda Holt's voice was filled with tears. You did it. Or Borg Rossetti. Did you find her? Nope. Brady Pollitt replied coldly. Borg Rossetti and Miranda Holt were quickly thrown out. Brady Pollitt tidied up my messy dress, found the killer. I stared at him. You already knew, didn't you? I don't believe Borg Rossetti can tell I'm not Eartha Betsy. And Brady Pollitt, who has been with me the longest, can't. Brady Pollitt was speechless. I laughed angrily. Then you pretend you don't know me. Well, Brady Pollitt, I don't deserve to mention my own name. Brady Pollitt continued to straighten my skirt as his fingertips ran over the back of my waist as he went. It dawned on me that he had grown from a teenager who depended on me to a mature man. He said in a low tone, Have you ever thought about touching my head like you used to? Then I'll believe it. I believe that the person in Eartha Betsy's body is me, Amelia Tom. Don't you think you're NAVE? I asked rhetorically. Brady Pollitt bent over and picked me up. He said, then BNAVE. I calmed down and said, "You're out of bounds. You're not Amelia Tom. You're Eartha Betsy." Brady Pollitt pressed his fingertips to my lips, and he smiled faintly. My fiancé. I had a hunch that maybe in the cemetery, the first second my soul drifted into Eartha Betsy's body, Brady Pollitt found out. I raised my head slightly, and even the ceiling of this basement was plastered with pictures. I laughed at myself. Raising a child has raised two perverts. Brady Pollitt followed my gaze and looked towards the ceiling as well. After a while, he said, "I have a basement like this." Me. I lay on the soft bed, which was my room. The furnishings have not changed at all, but my instincts tell me it's a little weird. Brady Pollitt pushed the door in, and I got straight to the point and asked, "You slept in my room since I died?" Brady Pollitt didn't answer my question. He stepped up and wrapped his forearm around my waist, gradually tightening. He had a lot of strength, as if he wanted to rub me into his flesh. "Brady Pollitt, are you crazy?" I jerked up my voice. Brady Pollitt's voice was steady. "What are you talking about, my fiancé?" It seemed like I was making a fuss about ignoring the body. I was forced to cling to him. After a long time, I suddenly said, "You've been waiting for this day for a long time, haven't you?" Brady Pollitt's voice was hoarse. "I want to kiss you." I laughed. "You can kiss me in the face that isn't mine." Brady Pollitt's thin lips brushed against my ear, and I couldn't help but shudder. He said, "As long as our souls are together." Paranoid to the extreme. "You say, everyone knows that Brady Pollitt has a deep affection for him, so why can he accept Eartha Betsy?" Stop chewing on the root of your tongue. If they are caught, they will not be able to eat and walk in their pockets. Alas, after that one died, the Tom family group became a mess. Who knew Brady Pollitt was so vigorous? The means are cruel. I slowly stepped back and sat down at the dresser. Thoughts drifted away. When did everything start and become different? Push forward. The first thing I said to Brady Pollitt, when he turned 18 was, "Do you have a girl you want?" He stood at my desk, and didn't say a word for a long time. I got it. I turned the pen between my fingers. "Who?" Brady Pollitt just looked at me, still not answering. "I guess the family background is not so outstanding, then I'll be blunt. I'm quite happy with the only daughter of Miranda Holt and Betsy. But Miranda Holt has a terrible personality, and I prefer the latter." In the office, you can hear a pin dropping. I knocked on the table. Brady Pollitt's eyes were down, and with his superior and delicate face, the more I looked at it, the more pleasing it became. It also makes me more and more satisfied. "You haven't wished me a happy birthday yet." Brady Pollitt's voice was muffled. I scoffed. "You should be concerned about things that are much more important than these trivial matters right now." I waved my hand and motioned for him to go out. "If you have any gifts you want, just swipe them from the supplementary card I gave you." Not long after Brady Pollitt left, my assistant Emily knocked on the door. "Borg Rossetti wants to see you." I pressed my eyebrows. Why does it feel like he's so idle day by day? "Nope," I say. After saying that, I turned the phone message prompt to silent. As I expected, within 2 minutes, Borg Rossetti's news bombardment came. I was harassed by Miranda Holt in the morning, and am a bit irritable now. Miranda Holt is the little princess of the partner's family, but Borg Rossetti is different, homemade. So I sent a message to Brady Pollitt, "Find something for Borg Rossetti to do. Don't let him message me every day." I learned in the evening that Brady Pollitt and Borg Rossetti were fighting. When I arrived at the scene, I smiled. "Are you afraid that I'll be idle?" I didn't ask the reason for the fight. I just said, "Family motto." Brady Pollitt didn't speak, and Borg Rossetti didn't stumble to my surprise. Miranda Holt came out of nowhere. She looked at me in astonishment, as if she wanted to say something, but swallowed it anyway. After a long time, I learned from Miranda Holt that there was no reason for their fight. Outrageous. Miranda Holt asked me, "You don't really care about them at all. You just want a perfect heir, right?" I was surprised. "Isn't it obvious? I am not related to them by blood. As long as I am perfect, I can inherit my power and property. Am I asking too much?" Miranda Holt threw the Chanel bag she was carrying on her shoulder to the ground. "Cruel woman. You're still interested in me." I laughed. "If you weren't Mr. Holt's daughter, you think I'd be wasting my time here with you?" Miranda Holt's eyes immediately filled with tears. "I hate you." After saying that, he ran away on a small heel. I called Emily speechlessly. Contact the driver to pick me up, and schedule a meeting in an hour. Miranda Holt. Ran. I really don't understand her. Push back in time. Push it to the beginning of my relationship with Borg Rossetti. I sat in my chair, and looked at the row of children below. It's all because the family conditions are not good, and I can't afford to raise it, so I sent it over, and let me cultivate it. All of them are yellow and thin, except for one. I squinted. Although the child was thin, his face was white and beautiful. I pointed at him. He immediately called out to me. Sister, what's your name? I asked. I don't have a name now. My sister can pick it up for me. He laughed and showed the shallow dimples on his cheeks. I raised my eyebrows, tilted my head to my assistant, and said, call Brady Pollitt. When Brady Pollitt arrived, he stood behind me. I said, if you don't have a name, you can take it. After a long time of no response, I looked up and saw that Brady Pollitt and the kid were looking at each other. Seeing me look over, Brady Pollitt retracted his gaze. Okay, I rubbed Brady Pollitt's head. Brady Pollitt, you're big brother too. As it turns out, not all of them are as worry-free as Brady Pollitt. The sixth time I saw Borg Rossetti at the office door, I was numb. I couldn't take it anymore, and sent a message to Brady Pollitt, take Borg Rossetti away. You supervise his homework in the future. Don't let him be idle. Borg Rossetti tugged at my hand. Sister, I brought something for you. With that, he pulled out a document from his arms, and looked at me with sparkling eyes. I hesitantly took it, and turned the first page, my face changing dramatically. This is the latest tender for my #1 competitor. I didn't ask Borg Rossetti how I got it. I asked, how do you know this is what I want? Borg Rossetti's long eyelashes fluttered, and the smile he showed was innocent and well-behaved. Maybe my sister said it one day. I accidentally heard it. Right. I nodded. After Borg Rossetti left, I flipped through the document and casually asked my assistant Emily, what do you think of Borg Rossetti? Emily smiled shyly. She didn't answer. After all, this involves the major event of my subsequent share transfer, and I thought about it. Emily whispered, in 2 days, you'll be able to get this information too. I said, he's 2 days late. After all, at this time, my computer was transferred to my reconnaissance team. I clicked in. The first is Borg Rossetti, mixed Chinese and French. His mother is a down-and-out aristocrat. The father disappeared after rejoicing with her mother, and his mother did not want to keep him. It's pathetic. I said, TSK, if you have a miserable life, your mind will be heavy, and it's good. Thoughts drift back. My scouting team sent me a message. The Betsy family group has been secretly exposed to various drugs. Eartha Betsy has been given the drug several times. Predictable, but in this series of processes, there is one person I didn't expect. Borg Rossetti. Borg Rossetti seems to have made a deal with Eartha Betsy. My brain atched. Memories of this body come back. Borg Rossetti bought off a babysitter in my villa, and gave me the opportunity to be drugged. Eartha Betsy made a deal with Borg Rossetti to give me psychotropic drugs, leaving me insane and unable to regain control of the Tom family. She thought that this would stop Brady Pollitt focusing on me and marry her. And Borg Rossetti, want me? Eartha Betsy, if she's mentally ill, don't you dislike her? Borg Rossetti smiled. I just want her in the palm of my hand, nothing else. I don't care. Crazy. Eartha Betsy cursed sharply in her voice. But instead of psychotropic drugs, Eartha Betsy gave me drugs that would make my body organs fail. Eartha Betsy's father didn't want me to die. It was too risky, and he was afraid that he would find out about the Betsy family. But Eartha Betsy insisted on going her own way. Eartha Betsy's father spoke viciously. Rebel girl, if you dare to interfere with our family, I will not be your daughter. When Brady Pollitt appeared before my eyes, I hadn't clearly distinguished between memory and reality. After a long pause, I blurted out word by word, Betsy family group, smuggling illegal drugs. Brady Pollitt took a grip on my cold hand. I've found the evidence. I've reported it. And Borg Rossetti. I closed my eyes. Brady Pollitt hung a black stone necklace around my neck. Leave it to me. Let's get some sleep. When I woke up, I felt like the world was spinning. It seems to be something different. I got up and walked over to the mirror. Staring at yourself in the mirror for a long time. It's back. My own body. My own appearance. But now that my soul can enter Eartha Betsy's body, it's not so strange that it will return to my own body. A piece of yellow paper was placed in front of the dresser. I flipped to the front. Eartha Betsy won't be coming back. I folded the yellow paper. This should have been left to me by the Taoist priest. As long as I'm back now, that's enough. I raised my eyes. In the mirror, the bottom of his eyes is still weak. I've never been liked by everyone. They say I don't have the kind of woman I should be. And I am ruthless. Doing things is always the supremacy of interests, regardless of the life and death of others. But, so what? The power is in my hands. And that's enough. I got up and used the first solution I had thought of while I was still in Eartha Betsy's body. I called Brady Pollitt's assistant, who resigned after she took power, and she answered the phone almost immediately. Emily, I call her. An unusually shocked voice came from the other end of the line. Amelia Tom. Emily has always been steady, except this time. I've only seen her lose control of her emotions once. That's when after I died, Brady Pollitt cleaned up the portal and fired a large number of people. However, he asked Emily if she wanted to stay, and could keep her position. But there are generally more than one assistant, and even if Emily stays, I'm afraid it will be hollowed out. She resolutely chose to leave, and was very calm when she cleaned up her workstation, until she picked up a plaster doll I gave her. Her eyes instantly turned red, and she hurried to the toilet, where the cold water was booming, and she splashed water on her face, and splashed water around the sink. But she still couldn't hide her whimper, and my soul floated in the air, watching the scene, from the time I knew I was sick, to the time I died, to the time I became a wandering spirit. My mood never fluctuated much. There are always some hurdles in life, although this hurdle may be lost if you live it. But this time, seeing Emily crying so sadly, I even had a hint of sadness. That plaster doll was a whim when I was visiting the night market, and after less than a minute of painting, I ran out of patience. I held on for another 3 minutes, and I gave up after watching the plaster doll be painted beyond recognition under my impatience. I was about to throw it away, but Emily, who had been next to me, stopped me. Amelia Tom, give it to me. I was helpless. I can buy you a batch of other people's beautiful paintings. Emily shook her head insistingly. I had to compromise and have my boss wrap up my ugly doll, and put it in Emily's palm. Later, Emily put it in the most prominent place on her workstation, and many people asked, Sister Emily, what is this? Still, it's special. Emily only laughed, and didn't answer. Emily didn't ask me why I was cheating. She just said, can I go back to you? I said, I need you so much. Emily went straight to the point. Is there anything I need to do for you? I quickly said, I will send my plan to your mailbox, and when I come back, I need to release the news first and control public opinion. Okay. In the year since I died, Brady Pollitt has developed many businesses of her own. Even if I return to the helm of the Tom family, he can continue to be his Brady Pollitt. Brady Pollitt sat on the couch and paused when he heard me come out, then turned his head slowly. I looked at him in the eye. His eyes flickered, and he didn't look over. Brady Pollitt, I called him. He didn't move. I walked up to him, raised his chin with my index finger, and told him to look me squarely. Isn't it a practice? Isn't it a rejuvenation? Why don't you dare to look at me again at this point? Brady Pollitt raised his eyes, the tails of his eyes reddening. He curled his lower lip and, as before, called me obediently, Sister Clara Tom. I hooked my lips, only to hear him answer, I'd like to put Clara Tom in a cage. I laughed. Am I a pet? Brady Pollitt got up and wrapped me into his arms, his warm palm against the back of my neck, and his voice was hoarse. I can be your pet too, as long as you're with me forever. I stood on tiptoe, and pressed my lips lightly to taste it. Look at my mood, I said. Brady Pollitt grabbed me by the wrists with one hand and pressed them against the wall to prevent me from escaping from his arms. I was forced to tilt my head, and get tangled with his lips and teeth. I can't accept losing you again, he said. I found Borg Rossetti. You're with Brady Pollitt. Borg Rossetti seems to have known for a long time that my soul would return to her body. He was staring only at the bite mark on the side of my neck. I raised my eyebrows slightly, together. Will you be my dog? Borg Rossetti withdrew his gaze, his lips moving, and whispered, why do you always prefer Brady Pollitt? I'll always love myself. I sighed. Borg Rossetti was not sick, and looked a little depressed. He knows your original name and knows your taste. Didn't he give me this name to remind me to always be one step ahead of him? Borg Rossetti. I frowned. You like power. Don't blind yourself. Borg Rossetti didn't defend himself. He laughed and his cheeks were still dimpled. Sister, that's what you think of me. I looked at him. You can't get out of my death. He paused. I won't forgive you, but I won't pursue it either. Borg Rossetti. I paused for a long time. Live well. With that, I turned and left. I was urged by Miranda Holt to go to her birthday, and the pace was fast, so I didn't hear the last thing Borg Rossetti said. I can't forgive myself either. Clara Tom. When I received the news of Borg Rossetti's death, I was on business. Emily looked at me worriedly. I waved my hand. I have a business meeting tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow, and you should contact those bosses in advance. Don't worry about my own business. I leaned back in my chair after Emily left. The scene of Borg Rossetti being by my side for 8 years, from the age of 12 to 20, comes to mind. I clicked on one of the hidden albums on my computer, and flipped to the top. 12-year-old Borg Rossetti pops up on the computer screen. His face is still very young, compared to today, but he has the beauty of a little girl's house, without the restraint of other children. He smiled generously. His amber eyes were bright, and there was cunning that had not been hidden. Fool, you deserve it. I sighed. I went to see Miranda Holt. She was dressed in a princess dress, and eating a small cake. I said, Borg Rossetti is dead. I know. It's not surprising that he's a madman. Miranda Holt cheek support. I don't understand. I frowned. Miranda Holt clapped her hands. Why don't you understand? Because he has scheming and power. I have no rebuttal. It's his own choice. Miranda Holt pouted. The Taoist said it's not a good thing to be obsessed too deeply. I thought it was Brady Pollitt. I didn't speak. Brady Pollitt is obsessed with being heavier than Borg Rossetti. I gave him a kiss. Miranda Holt handed me a plate of small cakes, which was cute to look at. I shook my head. I don't like sweets. Try it. Borg Rossetti loves it. Miranda Holt shrugged. I picked one up. Amelia Tom is dead, and when he dies, he dies. Anyway, you have to live well. Live well. Live well. I remember these 4 words. What I gave to Borg Rossetti ended up being back to myself. Live well. It didn't take long for the Tom group to be completely back in my hands. It is rumored that I wanted to pave the way for Brady Pollitt and test him, so I acted in such a play. The Betsy group and other groups that had previously been unfavorable to the Tom family were all destroyed. Everything went according to my plan. Miranda Holt snuck over and asked if I would marry Brady Pollitt. I laughed. No, my favorite will always be myself. Miranda Holt gave me a thumbs up. After Miranda Holt left, Brady Pollitt walked out of my bedroom in my office. Is it sad to hear that? I asked. Brady Pollitt rested his chin on my shoulder. The golden cage can't hold me. I say. Brady Pollitt's lips fell on my forehead, then shut me up. As I looked at the traffic beneath the tall buildings, 16-year-old Brady Pollitt came to mind that his birthday wish was to put me in a golden cage. Now it seems, it's clear who is in the cage all along. The end.